All right, what's up, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. I'm right here in California. It's 12 o'clock noon, and I am joined with our Master Motivation guest today, Mr. Dave Kovar. Good afternoon, sir.
Hey, great to be here. I love that intro, man. That was
Thank
great.
you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I get all pumped
I,
up, like
I was
kind of
thinking,
like
hey, I
coming to the
know
ring.
that guy. I know that guy.
Hey, so as I was telling you before we got started, the whole purpose of this video is for me to have the opportunity to highlight people that are, leaders not only in our industry but in our communities, and people that have truly inspired and motivated me. And I could say without a shadow of a doubt, you have not only inspired me for many, many years, but there are literally thousands of martial artists out there that know who you are and have taken your classes. I mean, you are the master instructor of instructors, as they say. And so I'm super excited. This was one of the ones that when I made my list, I said, I got to have Mr. Kovar. So thank you for joining me and taking some time.
Honored to be here. Honored to be here. My pleasure.
So, what I want to do is just kind of start off from the beginning, just let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background. And when I say background, I'm talking about, talk about growing up as a kid, and we'll get through a lot of, your schools and the instructor colleges and all the things that you do. So, let's start from the beginning and just give us your background.
Yeah, well, so my background is really like martial arts is all over my background, right? So I guess I'll go back to my family. I grew up in Montana, and probably in the mid '60s. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I saw a silhouette of a guy doing a flying sidekick on a billboard somewhere, and I couldn't tell you where it was. I just still it's vivid in my head now, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. It's kind of like I didn't find martial arts found me, and at the
Right.
time back then kids didn't do martial arts. They didn't do karate. It's just not. First off, there was really not very many places to go. But the kind of the perception was that's for hoodlums and troublemakers, right? And and then what happened is that so I wasn't able to do that. My dad was totally against it, but so I started wrestling in seventh grade in 1971, and then in '72, my older brother Tim, who went on to be my business partner for 20 years, went away to school, and he took a year of taekwondo training and came back and said, "You got to let Dave do this." And so I enrolled in the local school directly after that. That would have been in '73, and it just kind of it was what my life's been about since then. I was the kid. I'm sure you have them at your school. I was the kid that would take the bus after school, show up at 3, stay till 9, and spend my weekends there. So it's been a fun journey. Yeah. So actually, this September will be about 50 years since my first like wrestling match.
That's amazing. I was reading your bio and looking at your website, learning more about you, and I was really intrigued when I found out that wrestling was what started out. My son is 16 and has really found a love for amateur wrestling. Interestingly enough, that I was a pro wrestler, that he found that, and so I thought that was super cool. So you said you started out in Montana, right? And that's where you grew up, went to school. What kind of you obviously wrestled. Did you play any other sports in
So we
middle school,
moved.
high school?
Yeah, we actually I moved to California in 1970. So all this happened actually in California.
Okay.
And the only other sport I really did, it was interesting. I did play like a season of flag football, and I played little league. But ironically, my little league coach was a guy named Coach Corsi, and he's my best friend's dad. And at the end of the season, one year, my last year of playing, he said, Dave, he took me aside at the pool party for the team at the end of the season,
Hmm.
and he didn't mean to. He was trying to help me out, but anyway, what he told me is, he goes, you're not very good at team sports. You seem to be better at individual stuff. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm not very good at team sports. Okay, boom. And it was like and it really, I never really tried for anything after that. Really, it was like all about wrestling and skiing and karate. And so it wasn't until I was an adult that I actually realized I could probably do other team sports. But that was just, it kind of goes back to as a teacher, the importance of what you project into your students. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yep.
how many times have I, as an instructor, maybe counted somebody out or said something that they interpreted as, I don't think you can do it. And so that's why, one of the things that I really stress when I'm working with instructors is, man, we got to believe in our students. That's first and foremost, and believe into their potential, because you never know, what someone's capable of. And there's a great quote that goes, I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. And what that basically means is my coach thinks I can do it. I guess I can do it. My dad believes in me. I guess I can do it. The importance of us, if we're in a position of influence, to believe in the potential of the people around us.
Absolutely. And you're an accomplished author as well, and you talk about this in your books. I mean, I remember reading about that story. And you always have just a plethora of quotes and all these things that I know so many martial arts schools and so many instructors use those very same quotes, because I mean, they really do stick. You mentioned your dad, and you mentioned your dad not really wanting you to do martial arts, but eventually, your dad got involved in martial arts as well. And I love to see all the pictures that you post with your pops and your sons. And it's just so cool to have the different generations. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your mom and dad, your brother a
Well,
little bit more too.
so yeah, I have a older brother and sister, and not to sidetrack, my mom just recently passed, so she had a great life, and my dad is still kicking, and he's not literally kicking much, but he's 98 and a half years old. He's my hero for sure. He was a World War II. He was a bombardier navigator in World War II. He got shot down on his 11th mission. He was a prisoner of war in Nazi Germany for 9 months. Survived a couple death marches, a near firing squad. He's just really an amazing, remarkable man. And what's so remarkable about him is that he came back better, not bitter, if that makes sense. He came back with kind of a real sense of appreciation for life. And he devoted his time. He was a minister for 50 years and a personal counselor. So he kind of just gave himself to the people around him. And to this day, I just had him over last night, and he's not mentally as sharp as he once was by any stretch, and he's not moving real well, but he's still just sincerely. It's a pretty special generation. Just optimistic, kind, considerate person, and someone that I really try to emulate. And by the way, yes, he started training with me as a student, probably in his late 50s. And I remember thinking, dang, you're old, Dad. What are you doing, right? And he actually, if you go to YouTube, there's a video on his 90th birthday. I had him spar 9 rounds. Now, by the way, they were very short rounds, but if you go to Len Kovar spar, you can see him doing his thing. It's pretty cool. So he was really kind of anti martial arts until he got involved. And then, of course, when my older brother Tim, what happened is that I opened up my first school about 6 months out of high school, also at 19, just like you were, back in 1978. And I borrowed some money from my folks. It was actually a school that was already open, but it was struggling. So I remember taking it over. It had 6 paying members when I started. And I struggled for several years, and I would take day jobs. I painted houses by day in apartments. And then this movie came out in 1984. I'm trying to think of the name of it again. Oh yeah, Karate Kid. and everything changed. It was like before then I didn't have a lot of kids. I had a few. But I remember I had kids class only Mondays and Wednesdays at 5:00. That was the only time. All the rest were adults. And then I remember overnight there was this shift. This happened. I remember I was still painting houses by day, and I'd pull in. I'd work from 7 to 3, and I'd go home and shower, get the paint out of my fingernails, and I'd drive to the dojo, and I'd pull in the parking lot at 3:45, and there would be like a line of parents waiting to enroll their kids. And this would have been like 86, 87. And so I realized I couldn't process everybody. And plus my business skills, I'm a good businessman, but I tend to be, I allow myself to be taken advantage of, so to speak. Like, in other words, I'll give everybody a deal. So I had this full group of students, but nobody was paying retail price, and I was having a hard time paying the rent. And I realized this is a problem. So my older brother was my business partner, who was doing in another business. I encouraged him to come on as my partner, and that was of October of 1987. And he came on and applied what he knew, and we just blew up. By the early 90s, at our one location, I'm not sure if you've been to our headquarters school in Sacramento or not, but
I have not.
back in the day, we bought the building in like '91, and it's 13,600 square feet. So back in the day, in the early '90s, it was, I believe, the largest school in the country. But we had actually over 900 members at that location, at that one location, actively training every week. It was crazy. And then we started expanding from there. But my brother really allowed me to do what I love, and that is teaching and training. And so he really focused on kind of the back end, and I really started focusing on developing instructors. And having him as a partner allowed me to do some stuff that I would not have been able to do if I had to wear all the hats.
Totally. Yeah. When I first met you, your brother was still heavily involved in the business, in the organization. You were just growing. So I've met him several times. I've never had the privilege of meeting your father, but I do see a lot on Facebook, of course, social media, and it's just, man, watching the things that you post about your dad. And by the way, I appreciate the fact that he has served, and anybody that has served. I mean, that's just such an amazing thing. And the fact that you said he came from a totally different generation. But for me, and I know that obviously we have a little bit of an age difference too, but I've always recognized everything that you mentioned about your father, everything that you said about him, I recognize in you. He has had obviously a huge impact on your life and how you view things, because you're very positive, and we all know none of us are perfect, but I mean, you're very positive. The things you post are so inspiring. You have a huge following from martial artists literally all over the world. Um, how does that feel to you, to know that and to hear that?
So, humbling. I mean, I don't really look at it that way. I try when it comes to. I kind of look back. It's like, my first, by the way, just a little history. Back in 1981, I was approached by a student that had a video camera, and he had this idea. This is back when nobody was doing video. Hey, let's do some martial arts videos and let's try to sell them in Black Belt magazine. So we actually put together a whole series of videos. To my knowledge, if I wasn't the first one, I was one of the first people to ever do martial arts videos for sale, and that would have been 1981. And we did that for a few years, and then in the early '90s. My brother was always on it, man. We got to take these teaching concepts, and a lot of this, you just find through trial and error. And at the time, we were going to everybody's seminar on the planet, and I was really strongly influenced by Grandmaster Junri, and of course Tony Robbins and Stephen Covey and Brian Tracy. And go down the list. I was doing everything. I was and kind of compiling it into how can I apply this into our martial arts world. And
Mhm.
so we came out with a video called "How to Teach Martial Arts to Kids" in 1993, and we sold thousands of them, man. It was like, and that was when I came up with the instructor's creed and praise, correct, praise, and in the SSL rule, and a lot of stuff that people use. That was kind of where that came from. And then I just started kind of. I think we had an event at our school in the early '90s. It was a EFC summit, and a bunch of people came, and they wanted to see what we were doing and how we were doing it. So we started kind of sharing that, and it's just kind of grown from that. It's been pretty cool. I've had the privilege of traveling the world lots of times doing events and seminars, and it's been great. And um, it's. I think what's important is once you stop trying to become better, you quit being good. And I really feel like you got to try to stay relevant. And what that means is that the phrase Shoshin means beginner's mind, right? And the phrase is in an expert's mind, there is but one option. In a beginner's mind, there's 1,000, meaning keeping an open mind on things. And there's so much to learn from the quote, like, I guess, the younger generation, if that's so to speak, that I learn so much when I travel. And I try, uh, as best I can when it comes to Facebook. I don't post as much on Instagram as I could, just because I'm not comfortable with it. Is there's so much crap out there. Like I just want to post something that speaks to, first off, you teach what you most need to hear. So I post what I'm dealing with at the time and what I feel like what would I want myself to hear. And that's kind of what I go with. And thanks for the comments though.
Absolutely. Well, you do post. You often post what's on your mind, and you always turn that around into a lesson. I know that sometimes you're speaking to yourself. You're really just
Absolutely.
talking to yourself and teaching yourself. But man, let me tell you that those messages are so powerful. And you've got a few people watching here. My instructor, Mr. Cox, is watching.
Oh, hey, sir.
Jose Escobar is
Oh,
watching.
right on.
Yeah, so if you guys have any questions that you want me to ask Mr. Kovar, please just post those in the chat, in the comments, and I'd love to get some more questions going. But you got involved, really teaching instructor colleges. We had the privilege and the pleasure of having you out here to California. I remember I remember when we booked you to come out and teach a seminar, I was so nervous to go pick you up at the airport. Nervous just in the fact that I'm like, I'm going to have a legend in my car. What do we talk about? And you're like the easiest guy to talk to. Like as soon as we get on the video, we're just chatting away. I mean, you're just such a, for who you are, you're the most humble person that I have met in that position. And I really appreciate it. You know, we started using your, the career training, which we purchased from
Max
Maya.
manual, martial arts career training manual.
Oh
Yep.
man, and we still use that in our leadership training for all of our instructors. And I bet you that, you know, every one of my instructors and leadership team members could recite the instructor's creed. They memorize most of the quotes that are in those lessons. I mean, it's just so powerful, and that's just, you know, and you've gotten so much better since then. I mean, it's just everything has continued to evolve. Talk to me a little bit about when you first started doing these instructor colleges. Um, some of the struggles, maybe some of the learning curve.
Yeah, yeah. But first off, thank you for. I would just wanted to address. You said a humble guy, and thank you for thinking so. I'll tell you what. I have as big an ego as anybody else. I just am really good at not keeping my mouth shut when I want to say something. You know, that's really. You know, there's a lot of times I want to say anyway. But the instructors' colleges kind of evolved. They were started out informally, and probably I really started doing them officially when Maya asked me to do them when the Super Show first started, a couple years into it, and so I kind of adopted a format initially. And what's interesting is that in America, I had already had pretty much when I would go places, I had friends that would take, that would invite me. Most people aren't going to invite you if they're not friendly with you, right? Already. And so it's kind of like I would show up and it would be a hometown crowd, so to speak, like people were, but that's not always the case. When I traveled a lot initially, especially I did the UK, and I've been to Germany several times, in Spain and Australia, and where they don't know you and they look at you like you're an American, right? And
Yeah.
and especially in Australia, and I've been to Australia probably 12 times now. I go almost every year, and I love those guys. I got a bunch of great friends, but Australians are just by nature kind of like, they're not going to take your, who's this guy? They let you know how you feel. And I remember showing up and doing an event, and I had a bunch of guys basically like, there's like 80 or 90 people, and I'm doing a combination of a business boot camp and an instructor's college. And I show up, and, the whole front row's got their arms crossed like this, what are you going to show me, man? And I dealt with that a lot, and usually, over the course of the day, people would loosen up, and we'd end up having a good time. And I remember one particular time where this guy, everything I'm saying, he's kind of shaking his head. He's not interested. And finally, I don't know about you. Have you ever done like an event where you can feel everybody's having a good time, but there's one person that's not, and you're irritated because that one person's not, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
And like, I'm going, what am I doing? So I decide I'll go talk to him at the break. So I walk up to him at the break, and, I'm thinking, I'm sure, because we all had that dad in the stands that sat like that, and you're thinking he's upset with class until you walk up and he goes, oh, hey, how you doing? He was in another world. I'm thinking that's the case. And I walk up and go, hey, how you doing, sir? Dave Kovar. And he goes, hey, I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. I know everything you're telling me. And I'm going, oh, okay. And so it just kind of threw me off. And I remember I just wanted to, anyway. And so I told him right then, I go, hey man, if you want, the hairs in the back of my neck just went up, and if you want your money back, man, you can leave right now. It's no problem. I don't want you to be, I'll stick around and see if it works out, And then he proceeded to all day kind of verbally say little things about why that won't work for his community. Hey, you coach martial arts schools. How many of you times have you heard someone tell you that? That
Right.
won't work for me.
That won't work
right?
in my area.
That won't work in my area, right? And of course, certain areas have things that are a little different. But so finally, at the end of the day, some guy goes, he'd been teaching for 38 years. He's telling everybody, and somebody goes, how many students do you have? And he goes, I got about 25, but they're really good. And you've heard that too. And it was like, But anyway, long story short, at the end of the day, the guy's lingering. And I walk up to him, and I think he's gonna, give me more of a hard time. And by this time, I want to round kick him in the back of his, I just, I want to, I'm just like so tired. And he shakes my hand. He puts his hand. I goes, hey man, that was really good. I learned a lot. I'm going to do a better job. And it was like, that was one of those victories. You don't always get that, but overall, most of the people that have attended events, are pretty positive and encouraging. And my goal at them is I want people to leave. First off, you and I know you agree 100%. Martial arts is very unique, and I think everybody should train, especially kids. I think parents should teach their kids how to swim and have them do martial arts. Right? Those should be like required things. But that's only going to happen if us as instructors do our job right. Like, it's so easy to quit. There's so many reasons why a student could quit. And it's really up to us. I've had guys say, well, that takes their self-discipline. I'm not going to call them if they don't show up. That's their problem. Right. But we've got a bunch of students that are maybe a little lazy. They don't have self-discipline. It's our job to help them get started. Right. And so we've got to be the very best teachers they can. So the goal with the instructor colleges is to help the instructors to develop a will to want to be there, right? And then the skill to know how to keep them. Because the bottom line is, if how many really technically proficient martial artists do you know that just don't really care to be very good teachers? And then on the flip side, you have someone that doesn't know a lot, but they're all in enthusiastically, Right. So the perfect thing is a combination of the two. Someone's got the technical skill to do it, but they've also got the will, the enthusiasm. And sometimes it's just, that's my goal with instructor colleges is to remotivate people as to why we're doing this, because it's pretty remarkable the effect that martial arts has on people is really, man, kids grow up in your school, they're just a different kid than someone that grows up without martial arts.
100%, 100%. And it's interesting that you brought up, the swimming and martial arts, because I'm sure you saw the post it seems like it went viral on Facebook about the drowning white belt, and swimming and martial arts being the two most important things that you can teach. Before I ask you my next question, I have a comment from one of my students. He says, Master Kovar, I'm a 62-year-old and a larger person. I'm a student at Master Flame School, working towards his black belt, and he's working his tail off, I'll tell you that. What is the best advice you can give an older student who is on the journey?
So it's so funny. Nice to talk to you, sir. I'm actually going to be 62 in a couple of weeks. So I can really, when you said 62, the first thing I thought of is I go, dang, you're old. I go, wait a minute, I'm about 62 too. So here's what I would tell you. This is really important. This is what I deal with all the time, is that focus on what you can do, not on what you can't do. Okay. The bottom line is that regardless of your age, martial arts you should never have to sacrifice your health for your martial arts training. In other words, you should be able, I'm sure you have to modify certain things, right? And then the other thing is, don't compare yourself with that 19-year-old in class next to you, or a 19-year-old version of yourself. I've often asked this question of people when I'm teaching a class or a seminar. I'll say, how many guys wish you would have started when you were younger, like to an adult group? Almost every hand goes up. And my comment, well, suck it up. You didn't. You started when you started. The reason why we do that is because we're comparing ourselves with somebody else that's younger or a younger version of ourselves. But either one, it's not fair, because there's always going to be someone younger, faster, stronger than you are, but there's going to be someone older, slower, weaker. The whole deal is you just run your own race. You show up and you do the best you can, and you enjoy the process. And in 5 years from now, you'll be glad you trained for the next 5 years. So try to, the other rule from a practical standpoint, I call it the 80% rule. I'm still actively, I've already done 2 workouts today. I went down to the park with one of my black belts today, and we threw a medicine ball around and did calisthenics on a picnic table. And then I did a Muay Thai class with one of my other guys that taught the class. And I get training in every day, but I always quit early. I don't go to fatigue. Now that might sound like, why don't you do that? Well, because basically every injury that I've gotten since I've been 40 plus has been when I went a little too long. I grappled one more round. I sparred one more round. And so what I try to do, I call it the 80% rule, means that I always only use up 80% of my tank, and that I always have 20% left. And then the other thing to do when you're 62 is make sure you do a really good warm up. Right. So for me, it's all about making sure that and then train as consistently as possible. And so for me, I eat every day. I exercise every day. I eat every day. I sleep every day. I also exercise every day. I might miss a day a month. By the way, sometimes it might be just a walk around the park. right? But I consciously do something every day. And I think the mistake a lot of people do is they don't exercise as consistently as they should. And then they try to make up for it by training extra hard. And that's when you're setting yourself up for injury. And you can get away with that when you're younger. But as you age, there's not a lot of 62-year-olds that are still on the mat, sir. And the reason is because a lot of them are real stupid with how they treated their body. And the fact that you're on the mat is amazing. And just, be respectful and look at this as a long-term journey.
I love it. I'm taking notes as you're talking, and the three things that really stood out in what you just said is we often, as we get a little bit older, compare ourselves, especially for those of us that were active in a young. I mean, I know that I do it. I remember when I was 20 and I could fight and do it, and it's like now just you got to accept the fact that there are things that we can't do that we did when we were younger, but we're gonna stay active. The other thing is we often focus on there's going to be younger, stronger, faster people than us. We always say that there's always someone stronger and better out there. But what you said is there's also people that are slower and not as strong. And so we're always comparing ourselves to that other side, but not reminding ourselves how good we are in a
Yep.
sense, right?
Sure.
And the last thing is the most important. You talked about consistency. I mean, I see your videos every time you post it. You're always working out, and I know that you've got a lot of energy too. So you're moving and going. But consistency is the key, and the fact that you can't really make up for what you miss. Just be consistent. It's better to do 15, 20, 30 minutes a day every day than try to cram in a 90-minute hardcore workout.
So my dad one time told me I was probably 22. I was competing all the time, and I would say I was a really good regional competitor back in the late 70s, early 80s. I did some national events, but I was never going to be the world champion. But that's okay. I mean, I did my best. I trained hard with him, but at the time, as I've always I've had no problem exercising, and I'm in great shape. And and I'm over there, and my dad has this little routine that he's been doing his whole life. I remember one of my earliest memories is walking into the living room at about 3 years old and wiping sleep out of my eyes and yawning and seeing my dad doing push-ups and squats in the living room, right? And his routine takes about 6 or 7 minutes. And I remember one time I'm going over, this is after I'd moved out and I'm visiting, and I catch him right at the beginning of his workout, and I'm hanging out talking to him while he's doing it. And I proceed to tell him, Dad, your workout only takes, giving, like young guys give their dads a hard time. I still give my dad a hard time, by the way. He go, Dad, your workout only took like 7 minutes, man. I trained for 2 hours today or something like that. And he looked at me, I'll never forget what he said. He looked at me and said, Dave, a little of something is better than a lot of nothing. And it's so true, is that so many people think they need all this time. You really don't need a lot of time. To your point, man, you got 10 minutes, do burpees. See how many burpees you can do.
Right?
You won't last friggin' 2 minutes, most of us, right? So,
Yep.
literally taking some exercise and I always am fascinated by people that say they don't have time to exercise, and they'll drive 45 minutes and try to find to the gym, and then find the closest parking lot, drive along the parking lot, parking place, drive in the parking lot for 10 minutes, trying to find the closest parking place to go inside to walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, man, right. Just calisthenics in your living room, if you don't have time to do that, goes a long way. But consistently, think about this. If I consistently undertrain, let me back up. If I inconsistently undertrain, that means every now and then I walk around the block. That's pretty much a waste of time. If I consistently overtrain, we know that's a recipe for injury. If I inconsistently overtrain, that's also dangerous. The sweet spot to me is consistently undertrain, if that makes any sense. In other words, you find that spot, that breaking point, and you stay under that, but you stay consistent. It's kind of like, you imagine you have a race car, and you're never going to get another part for this race car ever. The one you got is what you got. The only thing they're going to give you is oil and, lubricant. You can lube the place. And so what are you going to do, man? And it sometime in your life, you're going to have to run a race. So you're not going to take it out hard driving every day. You're going to keep it tuned up. You're going to get on the track and drive around the track a few times lightly to make sure you still, and every now and then you might take a corner fast just to see if you have it. Right. But that's how I look at training. It's like, okay, I'm going to train every day. I'm not going to overdo it. I'm going to undertrain, but I'm going to do this on a consistent basis. So, I'll be ready. And what I mean by ready is I don't mean ready for like a violent altercation, although I'd like to think I would be. for me, it's more about if I showed at your school and you said, "Hey, Dave, you want to spar?" I wouldn't go, "Oh man, I'm in terrible shape. I should have been training." Or you want to wrestle? I go, "Yeah." I would be up to whatever challenge. Or my buddy says, "Hey, let's go hike the mountain tomorrow." I feel like at any time I can kind of be ready for whatever life might throw my way.
For sure, for sure. And it kind of reminds me, and Jose Escobar, he really found that powerful. A little bit of something is better than a lot of nothing. And he may give me a little grief on this because I know he's a huge reader with his entrepreneur's bookshelf. I did a program called 75 Hard. Not sure if you've heard of it, but
I have.
one of the requirements, one of the assignments is to read every day. And I'm not a huge reader. I'm a better listener. I like to see things. But to the point of a little bit of something is better than a lot of nothing. I would literally have to read 10 pages every day. That's part of the program. But I would stop on page 10. I would stop on page 10 every day because I knew if I started reading 15, 20 pages, I'm going to get burnt out. We do it with our students too. In certain programs,
Sure.
we prevent them from coming every day for a little while to
Yep.
make sure that they are ready to take on more instead of like, hey, you go 5 days a week and then you burn out, then you don't want to do it anymore.
Totally, man. As a matter of fact, for us, you don't want beginners to come more than a couple times a week because they're gonna get bored too quick. They're gonna injure themselves. Their life is gonna be out of balance. If they're an adult, they quit mowing their lawn. They're not doing boom, and all of a sudden they swung too far. You want to ease them into the program, 100%. And
Yes,
that's
sir.
so. I think that's good advice. I think it's smart that you did that. It's kind of like, you know. You got to know the bottom line is what motivates you. In staff meeting today, we were talking about there's a book by Barry Schwartz called The Paradox of Choice, and it has to do with how too many choices. You think choice gives you more freedom, but really, when you have too many choices, you can't make up your mind a lot, right?
Right, right.
And so a confused mind says no. When I'm not sure what to do, I do nothing, right? And you have this paralysis. Well, so in the staff meeting today, what we talked about was the importance of having, like, for example, when you go to the grocery store, you park your car probably in the same place or close every time, right? Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And the reason why, that's not a bad thing. That means you have one less thing to think about. Okay. You probably put your cars at your keys someplace. In other words, and those routines serve us well because then we don't have to be making as many choices. Do I do X or Y? Well, a lot of people they don't have any rules to live by from themselves. They don't know what their rule is. So at the end of the day, how do you know if you're successful or not? So yeah, being really clear. And what happens is then you have to make all these choices. Should I have that chocolate cake today or not? Well, since you don't have any rules, you have this dilemma. There's a choice you have to make. But when your goal is, hey, I only eat junk food on weekends, then it's a real easy decision when that's drawn to you or exposed to you, or should I exercise today or not? Well, if your rule is you exercise, then you don't have to think about it.
Right.
And it just frees you up for more important things that might consume your thought process.
That's amazing. Everything you're saying right now, I'm trying to apply to how I do the keys, the car, the workout. I mean, my workouts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I've got a routine, and when I go to the gym, I know which weights I'm going to pick up and go do it, and I don't have to think about okay, what because then you, like you said, you get paralyzed and then you just do nothing. Then you just
Mhm.
kind of like go through some motions, and you don't really get the workout that you deserve. So I wanted to post this up here and just call it out because my wife is probably watching, and she says, "Great reminders for all of us 40 somethings too." I think she was trying to put a little jab in there
Hello,
about
ma'am. Yeah, yeah,
something,
yeah.
but that's okay. And a good friend of mine, Brandon Kemmer, he loved your instructor and business training. He's learned so much from you through that, the Maya Show, the Instructor Toolbox. He says you're an awesome teacher of teachers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Going into being a speaker, I think you're a very dynamic speaker. You're very fun to listen to. You're easy to listen to. It's not over my head. Um, when you first started speaking, how did you feel? Was that a natural progression for you, or was that outside your comfort zone?
So I think, one of the advantages you and I have and other martial arts instructors, we're in front of people all day, every day. So you kind of learn your craft and your students, right? And for me, because I started teaching when I was really young, the school that I was started at, my instructor, Hanshi Bruce Juchnik, it was based on Tracy's Karate Studios. I don't know if you remember that chain or
Yes,
not.
sir.
They were the
Yes.
first big chain in the country back in the 60s and early 70s. And they had a business method, but it was everybody got a private lesson. right? Everybody got a private lesson every week. And if you have 100 members, that's a lot of private lessons. And so what happens very quickly, people get pulled into the teaching aspect probably sooner than they should have. And that was the case with me. So I started teaching when I was probably 15 years old on a regular basis, but there was just pretty much all adults. I had a couple of kids. So what happened is I realized I couldn't use my authority, like, listen, buddy, get over here, because I was just a kid. So
Right.
kind of organically, I just kind of learned to use my influence, so to speak, over time. And then, so that was, I guess, made it a little easier to get started. But absolutely, it's funny. I don't really get nervous in front of martial arts crowds, and a couple of reasons is because usually I have a lot of friends out there, and I know they want me to do well. In other words, but I also prepare. Like if I'm going to do a keynote, I don't just wing it. Like I go in there with a real clear plan, and I review what I'm going to do. I don't ever go verbatim, but I have a very detailed outline that I'm going off of. But I do get intimidated to non-martial arts crowds for whatever reason. If I go, we were talking about before we were online about to the Chamber of Commerce and, or something like that, I get the hands a little clammy and whatnot. But I remember my first time speaking at a martial arts event. This would have been in probably 1990 or 91. And it was in San Jose at Grandmaster Ernie Reyes' school, and actually at a hotel, but it was at his school, right? He was the host of it. And I was asked to speak. And I remember the topic was the 7 F's, and it was friendly, flexible, family, fun. I don't remember what it was. I still have that lecture that I wrote out. But my best friend is a guy named Eddie Solis, who had a school in the Bay Area. And he's sitting about 3 rows in, and I'm locking eye contact on him, thinking he's going to be my friend. And he's giving me cat calls. He's trying to distract me, and I never forgave him for it. But it was all in good fun. But so I got through that, and I got some good feedback, and it felt better. I've been doing more and more pre-COVID, more and more presentations to non-martial artists. Kind of my kind of shtick, as you know, is like it's the mastery mindsets. It's the how you take the concepts of martial arts and apply it in the real world, and it's a lot of fun, and it's challenging, but that's definitely one that I definitely suffer from imposter syndrome. Like, what am I doing talking to these people? They're in suits and ties. My goodness, they must know more than me. And I have to remind myself, no, man, I've been doing this for a while. I mostly know what I'm talking about, and I got to put my best foot forward and go from there. But you want it to be like, not taking something serious means you're not taking it. In other words, there's going to be some emotion going to an event like this, or you're not doing your job right.
Right. So you have studied and trained in several different martial arts. I understand that you're a black belt in several martial arts. Talk a little bit about your experience training in the different styles. I know jujitsu is a big one for you. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, so my instructor, my original instructor, Hanshi Bruce Juchnik, who I still have a relationship back there. This was in the early '70s. I still just call him Bruce, because that's kind of how we did things back then. In Kenpo schools, this was an American Kenpo school. There wasn't a lot of, like, your background is more in traditional Taekwondo, Korean styles, right?
Yes.
Tang Sudo. And
Yes.
so
Yes, sir.
you had a little more structure, and you came into a school where there was a little more protocol. We didn't have a lot, right? And so that was something I learned later on. But my instructor back in and you remember these days, it used to be if you and I met, the first thing we do, you're a martial artist, I'm a martial artist, what style are you? And then we decide if we're going to be friends based on the answer we give. How silly is that, right?
Right.
But my instructor kind of never really had a lot of that. We started doing, as a matter of fact, when I first started, there was a jujitsu teacher, Kodokan Jujitsu, old school Japanese Jujitsu, that taught twice a week. I started right away as well. And then we started training under the Angel Cabelas and Serrada Escrima in like 1975, a couple of years after that. And so he always had a very progressive, kind of open-minded look at other martial arts. And for me, the reason why I've trained a lot of styles, I've got a bad case of martial arts ADHD, I think. I've never been diagnosed, but I'm sure that I have that. But so what happens, I kind of have a pretty broad base, but it's maybe not as deep as if I just focused on one thing. But it served me well, so I still practice. I try to stay active in all the things that I've done. Probably most of my time is spent doing My training time is spent more doing jujitsu than anything else, to be sure. But I still practice Iaido on a regular basis and Kabuto on a regular basis and Filipino weaponry. I do bag work several times a week, and I keep up on my Kenpo. I still practice forms on a regular basis, and a lot of it's just maintenance. But what I find interesting about training in different arts is there's only so many ways the elbow bends. What I mean by that is a front kick is a front kick is a front kick, and a lot of it is the same, but some of the nuances are just different enough to give you a different perspective that help you kind of round out your game, right? And you all know, for self-defense, we don't need that much stuff, right? I mean, we don't need a good right cross and a good knee and a round kick, and you're probably good, right? But it's just fun to learn other stuff. It's kind of like, why do people play musical instruments? It's because it's cool. Like I like going, like, have you ever gone to a Dan Inosanto seminar where you're going to learn 500 million techniques in the course of an hour and a half? You're not going to remember most of it, but it doesn't matter. It's just the joy of learning. That's why it's martial arts, right? And so for me, it's kind of interesting. About a year ago, my wife got me some Freudian slip. I called her mom there. I got me some golf clubs because we live right by a golf course. And so, that was great. And so we went down and we took a lesson. And the whole time I was taking this private lesson, I swear, I felt like I was cheating on martial arts. I'm looking like, is anybody gonna see me, man? Like, oh my goodness, and so I've kind of come to the piece that that's just my hobby. It's just what I like to do, and it's not about defending, as you know, against the bad guy in a dark alley, because most of us aren't going to die in a back alley knife fight. It's probably not going to happen. And so once you get past that, it's just kind of the joy of experimenting with different potential outcomes, so to speak.
Awesome. Talk about your instructors and the people that you train with, the people that teach you, jujitsu, the Escrima, and just kind of highlight them a little bit, because
Sure.
Someone like you that has been training for 50 years, you have a lot of people that have helped you to get to where you are. So just talk about them a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So my original instructor was a gentleman named Hanshi Bruce Juchnik, who I still have a relationship with. I had the fortunate privilege of training directly under Angel Cabelas at Serrada Escrima, one of the first Filipino instructors in the United States to kind of gain recognition, a very well-known guy. I also had the privilege of training with Remy Priestis. I never got any rank from Remy Priestis, but of the founder of Modern Arnis. He actually lived with me for 3 weeks one time years ago. And it was pretty remarkable. I have a gentleman under Don Cuesta and Nito Naval. I'm also a black belt in Doce Pares system of Filipino weaponry, as well as Serrada under a guy named Guru George Santana. I trained extensively in Jeet Kune Do under Burton Richardson. I'm like a black belt equivalent. They don't offer it in that art. Kind of in the lineage of Dan Inosanto, who I've done a lot of seminars with, that whole crew, and Eric Paulson, and there's so many, Ron Balicki, and that whole crew. It's really remarkable stuff. I still train with Shihan Mikao Nishiuchi, who's my Kabuto and Iaido teacher. I train with him pre-COVID twice a month, not as much now, but we're getting back to it. I've been training with him for about 30 years. He's like a real samurai. The guy's like just this amazing. He's one of the highest ranking Kabuto and Iaido practitioners. Iaido's the peacetime art of the samurai. I know you know it, but it's the art of drawing the sword. Yes. He's like, if you go to YouTube, he's the top slot for Iaido, or he's got the most views, but just an amazing, and the arts are cool, but he's like all these lessons that I get from him about life. He'll show up, and there's usually 2 or 3 people that show up for his class, and there are a couple of my senior instructors, and he spent 2 hours preparing for a lecture on something. It's just really powerful. And of course, one of my instructors is Fred Degerberg out of Chicago, an amazing guy. And I also trained extensively with Grandmaster Jun Rhee. I got like my 4th degree under Grandmaster Jun Rhee in the early 90s. Loved that guy. I had a great relationship with him until he passed. He came out to my school a lot, and just really remarkable. I got some great Jun Rhee stories if we have time. As far as other rank goes, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I got my black belt from Pedro Sauer and Carlos Valente. And those are still the guys that although I've trained with a lot of different guys, I actually started with Cesar Gracie back in '94 when the fur craze. I remember everybody saying, I'm going, guys, this is going to happen. This is it. This is 6 months after the first UFC. I went and enrolled with it. I had to drive an hour and a half one way, but that was the only place to go. And it's really interesting to see how it's kind of kind of taken over. And then another big influence for me, who I just spoke with this morning, who's a friend and mentor, is Grandmaster Ernie Reyes Sr., just an amazing guy. And other influences would be Nick Kokinos, the founder of Educational Funding Company, not as much from a martial arts standpoint, but from a life and business standpoint. I'm sure I'm missing somebody there, but that would be the most of the core people that have had influence on me in my martial arts world.
That's a huge list. That's an extensive list. Did you search them out, or did in a way did they find you? I mean, that's a lot of different people, and a lot of very different things. So were you seeking those people out specifically, or did it just kind of organically happen?
Mostly, I think Shion Nishuchi came into my school saying, "Would you like to learn Kabuto? I just moved here and I'm looking for some students." Besides that, most of those people I would have searched out or just kind of fell into. There's another gentleman I have to mention. His name is Grandmaster Ray Arquilla, who's a super high level. Not a lot of people know him, but he's a super high level Kenpo guy that I still train with to this day. As a matter of fact, I'm learning a spear set from him right now. Just it's so good for the mind to learn new curriculum.
And aside from the martial arts technique skill level, what is it that you look for in a mentor or an instructor, someone that you want to learn from? What are some of the qualities that you look for?
I think for me, it's someone that's kind of walking the talk. Nobody's perfect, besides you and me, of course. That was a joke, everyone. Just is
Yeah.
it somebody somebody that is passionate about what they're doing and it really has the best interest of the people around them. We all know people that maybe are a little bit more selfish. You know what I'm saying? They kind of like, if you had to share a bed with them, they'd wake up with all the covers in the morning. That kind of person. I look for people that are have the best interest of the people around them in mind. That would be kind of a guideline, and somebody that tends to be a little bit more proactive, so to speak. Has a little bit more of a positive outlook on life. Not that there's plenty of reasons there's plenty of stuff to be upset about, and there's nothing wrong with taking a stand on certain things. But for me, I don't want to be around someone that lives in that zone. You know what I mean? I want to be around someone that's able to enjoy the moment. Because that's, for me, it's about kind of mastering a series of mindsets, and a lot of the mindsets that I really focus on, I got from some of these mentors.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. You are that person that people seek you out because of you walk the talk. You're the real deal, right? I mean, everybody can see your passion behind what you do. So from the people that taught you, and now you're passing that on, creating also future leaders all over the world. Since we have time, we got a few minutes left, and you mentioned it. Tell us one of those stories about Junri.
Yeah. So when I first met Grandmaster Jun Rhee, it was in February of 1987, and this is when I realized. After that is when I was still painting. I didn't fully believe I could do this solely. I tried to do martial arts for a living by itself, but I was struggling, so I had to get that day job. And I actually flew to Southern California to the seminar, and I went with my friend Eddie Solis, and the two of us showed up, and it was all the Texas karate greats were there. Guys like Ishmael Robles and Tony Lopez and Jose Santa Maria. Anyway, all these guys that in Texas everybody knows, really amazing guys. And they were there. And I remember the first time I met him, everybody stood in attention stance. And I'd never been in that environment. Our environment is very loose. And I was so impressed with what he projected as far as what I kind of thought like a real grandmaster is supposed to look and act like, and so I just became enamored with him. But one of the stories was, for years and years he used to do 1,000 push-ups a day. Okay, and he really did do 1,000 push-ups a day. You can
Incredible.
argue whether that's good for you or not, but he did.
Right.
He wasn't going to hear it. He did it, and I remember at the time, this would have been 1992 or 91 or 92, but he was awarded outstanding Asian American by George Bush Sr. Okay, and in L.A., and he was given a point of light for outstanding Asian American, and he called me on the phone and says, "Hey, I'm able to do a demonstration at a presidential dinner, and I knew all his curriculum, all his forms, and could you bring a couple of kids to perform with me for the president?" And I, of course, like, what am I going to say? Of course. Heck yeah.
Right.
And so we hop on a plane, we fly out there, and I get there a day early. And that morning, I'm rooming with him, by the way.
Hmm.
I'm sharing a room with him. And that morning, we do our workout. We do 5 sets of 100 push-ups, and we do, he gives me a private lesson on his, what he calls his acupuncture, his quick punch and his kicking and etc. But or he does 5 sets of 100 push-ups. I try to do 5 sets of 100 push-ups. Okay. We go about our day. That night comes. It's pretty cool. I get to meet the president. I got a picture with the president. It was really, have you ever had that moment when you're taking a picture and the camera won't work and the guy's in a hurry? That
Yes.
was what happened for me with a picture. It's like, oh man, no one's ever going to believe me. Right. But anyway, so we got the picture. Remember, he'd only done 500 push-ups that day. Right. And so he goes out, he meets some of his friends that he hadn't seen forever, and he goes out to dinner with them. I go back to the room. He comes back. It's about 11:30 at night. And as much as I love Grandmaster Junri, I didn't really want another lecture that sometimes you get that are really long. So I pretended like I was sleeping. And he walks in and he sees that I'm sleeping. He quietly takes his dress shirt off, and I watch him drop down and do 5 sets of 100 push-ups before he goes to bed.
Wow.
That's just who he was. And then another time he was staying at my house and we're doing an early morning workout, and he would have been about my age now. He would have been in his early 60s. And I'm holding the mat for him, and he's working on a spinning hook kick, right? And his right leg was way better than his left leg, but he's trying to get his left leg better. And I remember I had this, he goes, okay, hold it like this. Okay. He's really into it, right? And I remember just stopping and go, sir, you really like martial arts, don't you? And he looked at me and he goes, are you kidding? I love it. I just thought that was the coolest thing. Yeah, yeah. So, but he really was in my opinion, the epitome of really someone doing his best to lead by example. He really lived his life trying to do the right thing at pretty much every moment, and that
That's
was
an
pretty. Yeah.
amazing story, and it just what a great experience, right? Because there's just not that many that you get to have that interaction with in your life. So and I know that you were also present when Tony Robbins earned his black belt. You just posted a picture actually recently,
Yeah.
and that was kind of a big deal for you. Was Tony Robbins someone that that you looked up to and inspired
Yeah,
you,
of
a
course,
mentor?
of course. As a matter of fact, I still do, but the difference is I went to my first Tony Robbins seminar in April of 1987. So that would have been, what, 34 years ago, I guess, right? Is that right?
Mhm.
And I was heavily involved. No, in April 1989. I apologize, April 1989. And I was heavily involved. I went to do his Mao certification. What was called certification, a program he had for 2 weeks. That was there he got his black belt at. I used to staff his events. I was the leadership. I would spray people's feet after after their fire walk, and
Yeah.
I did mastery and all of them. And I still every now and then I'll watch a video, but it's kind of like, I mean, no disrespect, because I've learned so much from Tony Robbins, but it's kind of like your favorite song that you've listened to too many times in your life and you don't have to
Mhm.
listen to it anymore, if that makes sense. But yeah,
Mhm.
being there on stage when he got his black belt, I was involved. I was kind of behind the scenes a little bit with that and helped with the test and whatnot. It was pretty remarkable. The power he had with that sidekick, like holding boards for him, was like crazy. What's really interesting, Grandmaster Ernie Reyes will tell the story, but when we were holding boards for him, he didn't break it the first time. He missed it. I can't remember, missed it 1 or 2, and he was actually losing state. He was and Ernie Reyes had to remind him, come on, and get him back in state so he could break it. It was really cool. It was really cool, but it was, that was a very influential, definitely he's had a great influence on so many of us. And to this day, I think he's really done a lot of good for a lot of people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, I brought this up, early on, but you've been recognized many times. You've received lifetime achievement awards, many recognition for all the work that you've done in the martial arts industry. Again, how does that feel to you to be recognized like that?
I'm honored. I try not to dwell on it. It's like too much. To me, it's kind of once again imposter syndrome. Like, I'm just a guy that just shows up in the morning. I don't mean that. I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I really feel like I'm still trying to figure it out, man. I just get up every day and try to do my best. And if what I'm doing or if what I say speaks to you, I'm honored. I'm honored. If that's been the case, and there's so much to learn, and there's so many things that I can do better. That I mean, like, I've been in this industry. This is my 43rd year of running a martial arts school, and I'm still learning. And I So it feels good to know that I've made an impact, to be sure, and now it's like I said earlier, it's just trying to stay relevant. You want to, I look at the next generation of people, yourself, and this whole generation of people that are so sharp. They understand how to run a business. They're young enough to still have that energy, but they have enough experience to know what they're doing. They don't have as many bad habits as maybe my generation had, because we didn't, we had nowhere to go for inspiration when it came to running a business. There wasn't any models,
Right.
or the models weren't very good, I should say. And so a lot of the stuff we had to make up. And part of me feels like I'm trying real hard to stay up on technology, but it's kind of like it's not I gave my first time I gave my daughter her phone. I didn't give her a phone at 5, but when she was like 5 years old, and she's 23 now, to put it in perspective, she had it figured out better than me instinctively. So
Mhm.
part of me feels like I really got to stay on top of it, or I'm going to be I'm not going to understand what's going on. Like I said,
Mhm.
so to
Mhm.
really try to stay relevant. But I'm so impressed with what the next generation of martial arts professionals are doing, and where it's going. It's exciting.
It. Maybe you don't, maybe you do notice, but there. It looks like there are a lot more gurus, a lot more
You think?
coaching,
You
a
think?
lot more people touting their knowledge and this is that. Uh, how do you feel about seeing so many people, being a life coach, being a
Yeah.
business consultant? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's honestly, from a business standpoint, as you know, it's very competitive, because I coach schools. I've been doing it for a long time, right? We have our Satori community. We've been doing our Promac for over 20 years, right? A long time.
Hmm.
And so every time someone steps in the market, of course, that's another competitor, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. There's plenty, there's plenty of fish in the ocean, so to speak.
Right.
I would just want to tell people, and this, man, because you coach schools. Um, I think sometimes it would be easier not to, just to focus on what you're doing. Like forget that stuff, because sometimes it's hard to get. I have a great group of clients that I love, and I'm happy to do what I do. Don't get me wrong, but it's. I would tell those guys that are thinking, "Hey, man, I've been successful." Sometimes you see a guy that's been successful for a year and a half, and he thinks, okay, I can show other people how to do this. Let me teach you how to do staff training. I got 2 employees, but let me show you how to do this. I'm sounding a little sarcastic. I don't mean to, but maybe there's a little hint showing up. It's really friggin' hard to do. And what I would tell people is that, the most important thing, who friggin' cares how many phone time you can get someone's phone to ring if you don't service your students very well? It really starts with having a rock solid program where you're teaching authentic stuff. And I don't mean, my style is better than your style. I mean, like, sincerely have your best students' interest in mind, and how to interact with them. If you
Right.
can't do that, then it doesn't matter how many inquiries you can get, right? So for
Right.
me, it's always about martial arts first, teaching second, business third.
Yes,
Be
sir.
the best, live the lifestyle, man. Like you were talking, we and I were talking beforehand, and you just got done with your workout, and we're talking about all the stuff you're doing. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Live the lifestyle. That's
Yes, sir.
half the battle of going to the mat with enthusiasm, is being a martial arts first, and half the battle of having a successful school is having a class with a motivated instructor. So really, business third doesn't mean business isn't important. It's super important.
Right.
But if you put the business first, you're going to take some shortcuts, and it's going to
Yep.
cost you in the long run. Like, how many times have you seen in our industry where someone was killing it? We heard about this guy that's killing it, has these great numbers, and all of a sudden they're gone. Boom. You don't
Right.
hear about them anymore.
Right.
So the people that you see performing, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out, are people like, like John Bussard, of course, championship martial arts in Florida, the whole team, the Merton Silverman team, and all the guys along with that know what they're doing. Grandmaster Ernie Reyes, with these are people that know how to service do the right thing, and
Right.
then they follow good business practices as well. That wasn't quite. I didn't really answer your question, but I got
No,
off on a sidetrack.
no, I think you did. I think that, the most poignant point was that, you got to be genuine, you got to care, and you do. I mean, you got to live the life. I think that that is key because, like you said, if you put the business first, you're going to take shortcuts. Oh, I can train tomorrow, and then what do your instructors see? and then what do your students see your instructors doing, right? So you have to have the priorities in the right place. Last question before I kind of give some closing thoughts is on the flip side of, the consultants and everything that they're out there doing. Do you recognize that some school owners have leaned on the consultants and leaned on people to help them versus helping themselves? Meaning, there's school owners out there that are just looking for the silver bullet, right?
Sure.
They just want the answer. They just want to pay someone to give them the results. They don't really want to do the work. I mean, do you see that? Do you recognize that?
Of course. And it's a combination of the two, right? What it takes people. Yeah, so often, like people will say, well, they'll ask a question that they could come up with the answer if they just sat down and thought through it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm with you 100%. And most people that are disappointed with their consultant is usually because they expect them to do all the work for them. And that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Just like your personal trainer can set up your fitness routine, but you got to lift the weight. You got to do the stuff. And it's the same with this. And a lot of people are looking for, a way to, by the way, I think we should always try to find a way to leverage our time and do smart things, right? But at the end of the day, the people that I know that are successful, they work hard and they work smart, and maybe not like their whole career, but you've heard the phrase, I only work half days. Either the first 12 hours or the second 12 hours, right? Well, there's a lot of that to be said. Like, people that are successful usually put in the time at least until they get a strong base. Like in my case, I've got this amazing team with me, and I still work hard, but kind of by choice, meaning I could get by without going in today and things are going to be all right. But I elect not to. I elect to still stay involved, but I've got a little more freedom maybe than I did 15 years ago now. But that's okay. But you have to put in the time. You got to put in the fire before you get heat in the fireplace. You got to stoke the wood, and if you're not willing to do that, then it's going to be hard to make it in the long term.
Well stated. Well stated. I love it. And I'm just glad to hear you, preach that. So I just want to finish with a couple of closing thoughts and then give you the last word. But, again, I told you at the beginning, the reason that I wanted to interview you is I wanted to share you with, I have everybody from other martial artists that are listening to just my friends, family that are watching here on Facebook today, and I'm going to put this up on a YouTube channel because in my mind, it's a way for me to honor the people that have given me skills, that have taught me how to do something. I mean, I wouldn't have a lot in my school if it weren't for so many people. And like I said, we use so much of what you have taught. And I've learned kind of from afar, but I've had the opportunity to sit in on many of your seminars. We've had you to our school in the past, and I'd love to do it again at some point. But I just really wanted to highlight you and thank you so much for everything that you do and have done for us, for the community of martial arts, and just all the leaders out there. So thank you so much, Mr.
Oh,
Kovar.
it's my pleasure and honor. I'm happy to be here.
So finish with your closing thoughts and just kind of take the last word. Any
Yeah,
motivational advice?
yeah. So I would leave everybody with, I have a series of, we call them the mastery mindsets. And it's ways of looking at life that I'm trying to instill in myself better. And so we all have a series of mindsets or beliefs about how the world works and how it works in it, how we work in it. But most of them we get from our education and our environment and our experiences, but they're not always accurate. In other words, we might have been told, Coach Corsi, when I was a kid, you'll never be good at individual sports, to believing that and having that shape my life, right? Which has worked out fine, but that sometimes it doesn't. Well, so for me, the very first mastery mindset that we really push with our students and our team is I take great care of myself because the world needs me at my best. And I think so many people put themselves behind their family, I don't have time to exercise, I don't have time to eat right because I got all this stuff to do. And the reality is, if we want to be the best for the people in our world, we owe it to them to be at our best, right? So no one should ever feel guilty. Like I tell my students all the time, like adult students, how many guys, have a busy schedule? Man, how many guys almost didn't come because you had something going on today? Oh, right? How many guys are glad you came? Every hand goes up. Are you a better person after you come to class? Oh, yes. Well, you owe it to your family to keep training. right? And we owe it to our community. The world's got a lot of issues, and for us to get through them, we got to come from a position of power, right? And when you're sick and injured, there's a great quote comes from India that goes like this: um, uh, uh, a healthy person has 1,000 goals, a sick person has but one, right? And we know that to be true, and that so we kind of I would just challenge everybody to go out of your way to find a way to deal with your stress or minimize it, to get enough rest, to try to eat on purpose. I'm not going to tell you how you should eat, but are you eating the way you should? Getting some exercise in to really work on reading stuff that's going to make you the best version of yourself. And that is an important starting point that will help in whatever regard, whatever area you want to go to.
I absolutely love that, and you are definitely a living example of that. And if more of us could lead that way, I think that, like you said, being a much better place in our world. So, Mr. Kovar, thank you so much for your time. Just want to remind everybody that I do these videos each and every Monday. I love to start my week with some real positive thoughts, and I just want to give you a rundown of some of the people coming up in the next couple weeks. So I have Jose Escobar, who is watching today. Can't wait to talk with him. One of my best friends. Danny Cleary, who's a youth minister here in our community, who's going to get a chance to tell his story. We have Michelle Liddell, my instructor, Dennis Ichikawa, David Starachi, and Tony Fournier. So it's an action-packed, exciting event to have these videos each and every week. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And Mr. Kovar, thank you one more time. Really appreciate you, sir.
My pleasure. Good stuff. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. So we'll see you next Monday right here at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We're going to close it out with the video. Have a great week. Take care, Mr. Kovar.
All right. Take care, man.